welcome all who've just come to join us. I don't know if you guys have been hanging around the stage for a while, but here we are, Q&A stage again. The most honest stage in tech, so they say. So we're ready for your questions. If you have any kind of a question you want to ask, raise your hand and a volunteer will come over and give you a mic, hopefully. People at the back as well will try to get you in for this session. The next guest that we're introducing is the wonderful Charles Hoskinson, who's the founder, obviously, behind Ethereum, one of the biggest cryptocurrencies in the world, and the Chief Executive Officer of Input Output. So let's give him a warm welcome onto the stage, Charles Hoskinson. There we are. You're very welcome to join us today. I won't take up any more time with my rambling, so let's open the floor to the first question of the session. Anyone want to ask a question, please raise your hand. One at the front, off the bat. Go ahead.
Hello, Charles. It's okay? Yeah. Hello, Charles. Welcome to Web Summit. I am arrived from Beach Saber in Turkey, and I want to ask that, Elon Musk buy the Twitter, and then Dogecoin is past the Cardano in the market cap. And what is your opinion about that?
Hi, everybody.
Straight in.
So Elon's been trying to acquire or do something with Twitter for quite some time. I think he spends probably more time on Twitter than he does managing his companies at this point. It's a pretty addictive platform. But now that he owns it, it's like he's doing market research, right? It's got 110 million followers. It was a brilliant acquisition, but overpriced. But I think he'll make it back over time. Now, Dogecoin's interesting in that it had no use or utility prior to the Twitter acquisition. But if Elon is really serious about it, I do believe that he'll find a way to merge something related to Doge into Twitter. Problem is the tech can't scale to 200 million users, and so they're going to have a hell of a time in practice actually using that as a layer one. Now, potentially, maybe they could do something with Binance Chain. CZ put $500,000 into the Twitter deal, and so there's a relationship there, and we'll see what those guys do. But it's pretty exciting for the space. It opens up the conversation of identity with DIDs. It opens up the conversation of decentralized social networks, how to better curate information, and it's something we do think about quite a bit. And as for Doge going up and down, I mean, if they get 200 million users, it's the most used cryptocurrency in the world at that point. So congratulations, it has use and utility. But I tend not to worry about the day-to-day in the markets.
Thank you very much. Another question, there's a few at the front here.
Hi. Hi, Charles. Thank you for everything you have done till today. And I wanted to ask you, last time you decided you let us have Cardano decentralized. I've seen a video from you in the car in the morning. That seems to be a very, very important moment for Cardano, for you, for your freedom as a milestone. When it will be another moment like that for you, for Cardano, in the next months or year?
So Cardano is very decentralized at this point. It has millions of people floating around. There's thousands of stake pool operators. It's one of the largest proof-of-stake protocols around. You don't have to lock your money, unlike certain other cryptocurrencies. And it was a big milestone watching the community take over the ledger and run it every day. It's just magical and wonderful. The next step is we really have to honor the governance side, because all these people, they're fragmented and they need to be brought together, and we need to create a big decentralized on-chain government and actually harness the power of the community. Because if you do that, then it would be the largest decentralized organization ever built in that respect. So this is the big challenge in 2023. And we're going to lay out a roadmap at the Cardano Summit and at the Edinburgh Summit here in a few weeks, where the direction we think we need to take to be able to do that in a structured, ordered way, very similar to like how we did the ITN, and we had the Plutus, the stake pool pioneers, and then later the Plutus pioneers and these other things. So we always try to involve the community in that respect, and it's going to take some serious thought and effort, and there'll be lots of fights along the way, and Twitter rants and AMAs and 2 o'clock in the morning videos that you guys have all become accustomed to, and I love it. I don't know. Maybe I'll go on a diet or something too.
Thanks a million. There's another question at the front. One of the volunteers, can you mic up? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Hi, Charles. This is Tiziana from Nhóm. Maybe you remember we're also building our on Cardano, and since we're in the real fi sector, I was wondering if you believe that Cardano can be leading as like real fi examples in crypto, and if so, what pillars you think the blockchain itself should build on?
So for DeFi to become real fi, you need a lot of stuff, but one of the most important is identity. So we often say we want to bank the unbanked, but in the same sentence we tend to say we want to provide economic identity to those who don't have it, which is why we have such a strong presence in Africa, America, and Southeast Asia, and we have a great Latin American community as well. But in all those cases, you have a situation where you would like the person who's getting a loan, who's doing a remittance, the person doing a payment, the person participating in some form of financial service or looking for liquidity, to basically be able to own the things that help you make the decision to do that. You don't just give people money. You have a contract, you have a relationship, you have a credit score, you have something like that. And the problem is all those elements still tend to be living in the legacy world. And the people who control that, it's like Arrakis with the spice. You know, he who controls the spice controls the universe. Well, you know, the problem is the people who control that, those are the people that basically will decide whether you can use DeFi or not, whether you can use finance or not. So you have to do both in parallel, and that's why we call it real fi. And so we have some pilots we're running to try to help build out the infrastructure so that it's easier for dApps like yours to roll out. Things like the Possession relationship in Kenya, where we're going to try to do microfinance loans and integrate it into Lace and do an end-to-end transaction. So an asset-backed stablecoin or an algorithmic stablecoin sent to somebody in Nairobi who has a blockchain-based identity, a blockchain-based credit in the Lace wallet to that person, repaid through that interface. That end-to-end is a good proof of concept, and that pattern can be reused again and again by any dApp provider in any jurisdiction. So it kind of opens it up, and it shows you how to do those types of things. Obviously open source, obviously build the standards along the way, but I've been waiting for this for 8 years. I went on the TED talk in Bermuda, and I said, this is what we're going to do. I didn't think it was going to take this long. I was a lot younger. I had more hair at the time. But you know, we got there, and it's really going to be a lot of fun to see how that rolls out. But more broadly, my hope is that this encourages other people in the DeFi space to understand that DeFi goes beyond yields, and it goes beyond just some protocol. It's people at the core. And it's about liberating people. It's about lifting people up out of a circumstance where they're beholden to an intermediary who basically gets to decide their entire experience end to end. So that's what we hope to demonstrate next year at scale. You know, starting at a few million, then tens of millions, and then hopefully eventually billions of dollars of asset flows.
Thank you very much. The lady at the front, and there's someone behind there as well.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My question to Charles is, it's from a development perspective, and I want to know more about, like, what's your opinion on Rust? Is it going to change the market? And if it is, are you in the train, or what are your thoughts on Rust?
It's a great language. Mozilla, I think, created it. They built it as a web-native language, but it's as fast as C. We use Rust extensively at I.O. for cryptographic engineering, so most of our crypto protocols that we write, whether they be zero-knowledge snarks or our VRF implementation or these types of things, we use Rust. It's very easy to use formal methods with Rust. It's statically typed. You know, there's a lot of good stuff there in the Rust ecosystem. And what's nice about Rust is portability. That was one of the things that always frustrated me with Haskell. And, you know, I brought the whole Haskell community together. We were co-founder of the Haskell Foundation. And we contributed to a lot of projects like GHC.js to port Haskell to run in JavaScript and to have Haskell run in the browser via WebAssembly. That was called the Asterius project that was done by Twig out of France. But yet still, years of work and effort, Rust is still ahead in terms of portability to functional languages like Haskell. So I think they're very complementary. Haskell is really good for distributed systems engineering, where you want to be able to test a distributed system, apply formal methods like property-based testing and do simulations, and get as much non-determinism as you can out of that system. So this is a bedrock of like Erlang and what they do with OTP or these other things. Whereas Rust is very, very good for writing secure, high-performance, very portable infrastructure code, like an operating system, a verified kernel, crypto code, and so forth. And they kind of work together. The other language we've been looking at extensively, well, we have a long legacy of Scala, and Scala 3 is phenomenal. I love it. I wish it was out 10 years ago. Life would be different. But we also do a lot of work with TypeScript as well. And it turns out they're all very complementary to each other, TypeScript, Rust, and Haskell, and they work beautifully as an ecosystem.
And they're also there at the front. There was one. Thank you very much.
I just want to add one thing. Do you think, should I learn Rust, or what should I learn?
Well, if you want to be a blockchain developer, that's where the industry is going. Polkadot's written in Rust. A lot of smart contracts are being written in Rust. And there's that and Go are the two languages. I think Algorand is written in Go, and Fabric, I believe, is written in Go. So those are nice. Functional programming languages, it's nice to learn Haskell as a skill, because functional is a paradigm. And even if you're in Java, you have a functional paradigm, you know, and just applying that to your code helps you get determinism, reproducibility, conciseness, and easier time dealing with state management.
Thanks very much. Just jump over to the back.
Yeah. Sorry?
I think just, yeah, hold it up.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, Charles. Hope everything is good on your farm. I think there's so many layer ones now with Solana, Cardano, Near, Ethereum, and so on. So it would be cool to kind of get your perspective on the pros and cons of the different protocols, and what position you think Cardano will have in the future.
So I tend to group them in terms of generations. And so first generations are Bitcoin and its derivatives, second generations Ethereum and its derivatives, and then third generations are like the Nears and the Algorands and the Tezoses and the Solanas and Cardanos. And they're all trying to solve different problems when you look at layer one. So the first generation was trying to solve the problem of decentralization. So the David Chaum problem, you know, they had DigiCash, and he had this centralized company that had to issue the money. They said, well, we'll get rid of that company and have peer-to-peer payments. The problem is it's just a push protocol, and you can't do anything with it. So second generation came, and it was almost like when JavaScript came to the web browser. You went from static websites to these beautiful interactive experiences where you get Facebook and so forth. So analogously, the smart contract gave us enough programmability to have user-issued assets, to have dApps, oracles, all kinds of stuff. The problem with that second generation was it doesn't scale. It wasn't really built for interoperability across other ledgers in an easy, convenient way, which is why we have so many bridge hacks. And then finally, governance is not on chain. So the third generation came out, and we were one of the first out of the gate, but now there's quite a bit of competition, which said we would like the system to perform well as it gains more users. So that's kind of your armchair notion of scalability. It's not how many TPS, it's your cost and user experience is proportional to your user base, and it's consistent. So, you know, BitTorrent is like this as a protocol, where if you download a movie, if you have more people downloading, you actually get it faster, not slower. It's a very scalable protocol for that reason. So we'd like an equivalent notion of that in the cryptocurrency space. We're all chasing it. No one's achieved it yet, but we've all made great progress. A corollary to that is inclusive accountability, whereas these chains get very large, they're going to have huge amounts of data, petabytes, exabytes, yottabytes. And who the hell is going to store that? NSA and Google. Those are your two options. So pick which one you want to get it from. So you need basically some form of a data availability layer, or some form of proof that basically tells you that the history you're looking at is correct, even though you don't have a copy of the blockchain itself. So we've seen great progress with that, with things like NEPA-POWs, proof of stake, Fly Client. We created a protocol called Mithril for this. The whole Celestia blockchain is kind of pursuing that. So there's a lot of innovation in that space in zero-knowledge cryptography and recursive snarks and so forth to achieve this. Then in terms of interoperability, We're not there yet either. We haven't had our Wi-Fi movement. It's still very hard to move assets, information, and people across different blockchains. And then when you look at governance, there you need to have on-chain voting and these things. No one's achieved that. So the winner of the third generation hasn't been picked yet. The winner of the first generation was Bitcoin. The winner of the second generation was clearly Ethereum, and whoever wins the third generation will be, living alongside them. And Ethereum is upgrading itself into a third generation cryptocurrency with the proof of stake upgrade that they're doing. So it's still a very competitive landscape, and it's a lot of fun, and there's a lot of deep protocol decisions. Now, the fourth generation, which is coming next, is multi-resource consensus, putting post-quantum stuff in, outsourceable computation, having an identity layer integrated into the system, private computation. There's a lot of cool stuff on the horizon. So there's going to be another wave of layer ones after the third generation settles down, and I think it'll be another 24 to 36 months for that to be decided.
Thanks very much. We'll go to the front now.
Hi, Charles. My name is Yulia. I'm from Ukraine. My question is, what is right now the biggest challenge for Cardano, and how are you planning to tackle it? Thank you.
So one of the cool things about Cardano is we've had this incredible, consistent growth, and that growth has been manageable. But it's getting to a point where it's no longer, with the current structure we have, easy to manage it. So when I knew everybody's name, every project building on Cardano, they could literally directly call me, and I'd say, hey, what's going on? And we'd have a conversation, and I'd put a team, and we'd work with them. There's over 100 projects that have launched on Cardano and over 1,000 under construction. We're number 3 for NFT volume in the entire space. 6 million assets have been issued on Cardano. Just as an example, when I went to CNFTCon, which was a community NFT conference, they called me up and said, would you like to come and speak? I said, sure. I thought maybe like 200 people would show up. There were 3,000 people there, and that's a Cardano-only NFT conference. 144 vendors exhibiting. And they put it on in short notice, just completely community-driven. All the tickets were sold in ADA. So you need a better governance structure to accommodate that. It's become blatantly clear, and I think that's our biggest challenge in 2023. The technology, we've written more than 150 papers. They've gone through peer review. We know what the technology can do and where it can go. It's inevitable that we'll get to where we want to go. So I don't worry about can we achieve scale, or how do we do this zero-knowledge proof, or how do we build a great programming language. Half the people on the Plutus team wrote Haskell. They were around in 1985. They've already built a programming language that stood the test of time, and it's still used. So I don't worry about those things. That's just time and effort. We have an abundance of that. The big challenge is, how do you take your community with you, and how do you manage the growth and get value out of the growth? Because if you don't do it right, you get a Cardano Classic, you get a Cardano Cash, you get a Cardano Charles's Vision, all these types of things, right? I'm the real Charles Hoskinson. But that's what I worry about, and that's going to be a hard year, because you don't broadcast, you have to listen. And you have to work with people. And sometimes not everybody's at the same level, and when a person's disagreeing with you, it's because you're talking past each other. And learning to listen, learning to build in this way is a very challenging thing, and not many projects do it very well. But when they do, you have a Linux kernel or something like that that becomes ubiquitous. And so that's going to be tough, and I'm looking forward to it. It's a big fight. That's why I got to lose some weight.
Thanks so much, Julia. Now we're going to go to this side of the room. We have a gentleman in front.
Hey Charles, Bruno, CEO, co-founder of Niftyfy. We've met actually 10 years ago in Miami.
Oh my God, that was 2014.
11 years ago, 2013. Yeah, we met in 2013 in Miami in a work group. Anyway, I'll show you the picture. I have a picture. Okay. You, Vitalik, a bunch of other guys.
Yeah, but you're talking about the Miami Bitcoin conference, right?
Correct.
Well, that was January of 2014, not 2013.
I might miss by a few months.
Yeah. I know this one very well. There's a book about it. It's not a very good one.
If you have 5 minutes after, I would love to have a little chat, and I'll try to find back the picture. I have a question regards the RINA protocol. We've been working on that for a few years now. What is the status of the implementation of the RINA protocol?
Which protocol?
The RINA protocol.
RINA.
RINA.
Yeah, recursive internet network architecture. So back in the 1970s and 80s and 90s, as the internet was still growing and immature, by the way, the internet was so small back then that they literally had a phone book that had everybody's email address in it. So if you forgot somebody's email address, you'd look them up in the book and be like, oh, what's Bill's email address? Oh, there it is. And then you'd send an email. It's a very small club in that respect. Basically, people said, hey, this TCP/IP thing was a good first start, but there's no way it's going to meet the needs that we have. So let's have different ways to do networking. And they tried. OSI and RENA was one and so forth. And almost all of them had great ideas embedded within them. The problem is that TCP/IP won, and now we spent the last 30 years as an ecosystem, the IETF and others, trying to find a way to kill it or replace it or augment it. So like Google, for example, built Quick on UDP as something they're trying to do, but all the network hardware won't really let you do much more than that. So RENA was a really cool idea that came out, I think it was either in the late 80s or 90s, about a different way of doing networking, which really enhances throughput, predictability, privacy, and it gives you a lot of other great features. And we thought, well, if we're building an overlay protocol in software, why don't we use this as the basis of the Cardano network stack, which is what we did. We took those ideas and some ideas from Cloud Haskell and the OTP community, and we put them together. And now if you're using Cardano, you're actually using a lot of concepts from the RENA ecosystem. The problem is we can only go so far, because when you're doing RENA stuff, that's great, but at the end of the day, your entry point, exit point to the protocol is TCP/IP or UDP. So you're constrained to what the hardware gives you. So we did have a conversation about would it make sense to build specialized hardware so it's end-to-end RENA instead of just RENA-esque behavior inside the Cardano network, which gives us great asymmetry attacks, why we never collapse like Solana or these other things. Their halting issues are mostly network problems related to consensus. And so we kind of designed the protocol for those things not to happen, to be predictable, but we're still fragile in that we have to be on the general internet in that respect. And building custom hardware, it only would make sense if we wanted to build a satellite overlay network for Cardano. So if Cardano gets to a certain scale, like maybe $150 billion to $300 billion of market cap, I think there's going to be enough money in the treasury where it's actually a legitimate conversation to build an overlay network for Cardano traffic that's satellite-based. And if that's the case, it doesn't have to be TCP. It can actually be a RENA dedicated hardware, and then you'd see gargantuan improvements in that respect. But we learned a lot. We have great peer-to-peer design, and I just signed this morning a research agreement with University of Athens, actually another Greek university, to augment what we've done with a pub-sub protocol. So we're pushing the boundaries of network science, and we've done some great work in that respect. And it's undervalued. It's only recently starting to be talked about. Like there's a paper out of Stanford that David Shee and his authors wrote that said, hey, these Cardano guys actually did a pretty good job thinking of all these things through. And that's our fault because we didn't write it down in a way that people really cared too much about it. Thanks for bringing it up. I haven't heard about RENA in a long time.
Good question. I think we have time for one more. There's a few at the back over there. If we can get a mic over.
Hi. Hi, Charles. My name is Musi. I wanted to ask, how much are the macro events that are happening in the world influencing the blockchain/cryptocurrency movement? Is it more in how much, do you see it more pessimistic or how much pessimistic do you see it?
So at any given time in the world, there's going to be a war going on. At any given time in the world, there's a famine going on. There's somebody doing something nasty, and somebody's in a depression, and somebody's in a bull market. Now, there's a macro overall trend where some years are shittier than other years, like 2020 was an example of that. Pretty bad year. But sometimes you have pretty good years and so forth. I think 536 was probably the worst year in human history. I mean, it's pretty bad. Look it up. So all things considered, well, in certain areas like Ethiopia or Yemen or Ukraine, things are not so good. There's never been a better time overall as a human to live. You know, things are okay. And we have a lot of great exciting stuff on the horizon to look forward to. Nanotechnology, synthetic biology, huge advancements in quantum computing and AI. These, alongside alternative manufacturing with like 3D printers and metamaterials, in the 2030s, this is going to create an age of wonders for everybody. The graphene age is coming. So I'm optimistic, and I agree with Steven Pinker when he wrote his book that the world is overall getting better. Now, crypto is not divorced from the world. We're right now running parallel to the equity markets. So when the stock market goes down in America by $9 trillion, lo and behold, crypto goes down. Go figure. So we're not immune to these types of things. I would like us to be counter-cyclic, where when things get bad, we go up. I thought that would be cool. But we're behaving like a tech stock in that respect, the industry as a whole. So, it's a bear market. And that's good for us as builders because it's so much easier to partner with people, talk to people. In bull markets, nobody wants to talk to you. It's a mad dash for getting money, and lots of poaching occurs and insane salaries and crazy valuations. Here, it's like a lot more fun. And so I've been through 7 bull and boom, bull and bust markets. I was in Bitcoin before it was $1. And I watched it from $1 to $30, down to $4, up to $256, down to $80, up to $1,200, down to $250, up to $20,000, down to $4,000, up to $69,000 or $68,000 or whatever it was, down to where it's at now, $20,000. That's why I got fat. Okay, so it's been a ride, man, and that's okay. And I think our best days are ahead of us, and really it's about solving problems. Here's the number that matters: 300 million. I just read a report from Broadridge. They're pretty big, and they put all the data together, and they estimate there are 300 million people in the world who have used or are using cryptocurrencies. It's like around 5% of the world population, give or take. Think about that. We were 0 13 years ago, and we get to 300 million. That's faster than the internet. The other thing that matters on DEXs, last year, $1 trillion of value was settled on DEXs, and they're just getting started. And they said in the report by 2030 that the vast majority of securities are going to be settled on blockchain technology. So when you look at those trends and factors, that the liquidity of the world, the assets of the world are going to be represented, stored, traded, and moved on a blockchain, that bodes very well for our industry. And when you look at the ownership, it's the young. And the young will rule the world in 20 years. And you think they're going to be like, yeah, crypto was great, but let's go back to JP Morgan Chase. No. Which is why Chase's, one of their fastest areas of growth is Onyx, their blockchain solution. These guys admit it. It's just like the oil companies doing research with batteries and hydrogen and alternative energy, because they know that it's not sustainable forever. And crypto's the same way. So I'm an eternal optimist. I know there are problems. I see the problems. I've been there firsthand. And we do what we can for them, and we do what we can in the micro. But the macro overall is solid and strong. And I mean, just look at this event. How many blockchain and crypto ventures are here? How many of you are from crypto ventures or blockchain ventures? Show of hands. That's pretty good. This is not a crypto event. And if you went here 5 years or 10 years ago, like way back, there would be no one who's crypto. There'd be one crazy person with a choose Bitcoin and be like, here's some alpaca socks. That's pretty good.
We actually have been blessed with a bit more time because you're such a star, Charles. So we'll take one more question. I think there's a few in the back. This guy is very eager.
Hi, Charles. I'm a big fan. Thanks a lot for all of your work you've been doing all of these years. You mentioned something about identity. I wanted to ask a little bit more about your thoughts. There are a couple of blockchains coming up, like WorldCoin stuff. Do you have any comment about the identity?
So identity is the single most important component because it's the last milestone we have to get through before crypto eats the world. And if we fuck that one up, then crypto dies. Because it doesn't matter if the transfer protocols are decentralized. If the identity protocols are centralized, those are the on and off ramps that'll basically decide your user experience. Here's a hypothetical, but it could happen. So they have this thing called FATF, and they have something called the travel rule, and exchanges have to follow that. Coinbase and all the others could wake up one day and say, we've talked to our lawyers, and our interpretation of the travel rule is that you're only allowed to withdraw to other regulated entities, not to a non-custodial wallet. because we can't prove origin. So what does it mean? You can only withdraw it to another exchange. So your money is now permanently in a custodial network, and you can never get it back. Your crypto's basically been taken from you. That's how powerful identity can be. So we must control the identity. And the good news is there's been a huge parallel effort for the last 10 years working on that. Manu Sporny and Chris Allen at the W3C, they did the decentralized identifier, the DID. And for 10 plus years, they've kind of gone through a standards-based process, and there's now a foundation, the Digital Identity Foundation, which has more than 35 members, our company, IBM, Microsoft, all these great companies, Accenture, and they're basically building products that follow and honor the DID. Now, DIDs need to be combined with protocols, and if you can get the right identity protocol and make it cross-blockchain, then you can use that as an overlay to basically handle the regulatory backdrop as transactions and values flow. So you don't have to hard fork Bitcoin or Ethereum or Cardano or these things to add regulation in. You can do it on a transactional level between regulated entities and non-regulated entities. And it just works. It's seamless. And you pay a transaction fee, and it's totally decentralized. And there's service providers that plug into it, like IDVs and others. So we have some ideas about this. With Atala Prism, we spent the last 3 years thinking about it. I spent way too much money thinking about it too, like $30 million, but okay. And that's fine. It's tuition. And we've gotten to a point where we think that it's going to be one of the most competitive areas in the space the next 24 months. The smart contract wars are over. It's commoditized. Lots of stuff is happening. The identity wars have yet to begin, and this is going to be a big one. Morgan is doing it with Onyx. Oasis Labs is doing it. There's a boatload of entities that are starting to subtly get involved in this stuff, and because they know this is the choke point, and they really want to control it. And for the sake of the industry, we need to make sure that whoever wins is decentralized. That's the thing that matters to me.
So for the last 5 minutes, one more question. We can fit over there behind. Turn around to this side again.
Thank you. Hi, Charles. So we all know that the legacy world of fintech is like a world ocean right now still, while the crypto world is kind of like huge lakes that are growing and growing and growing and getting merged together by bridges and other startups. But how do you see the future of this world? Will those lakes overtake the world ocean, or will they merge? And what are the steps for the proper merge?
Well, the reason why I mentioned the identity protocol is I think that's actually going to be the bridge that combines the ocean with the lake. So we'll keep growing, especially in the developing world, because there are 3 billion customers there, and the legacy world TradFi can't touch them. But then when you look to, well, how does a regulated financial institution touch an asset when they have things like anti-money laundering laws that have no de minimis clause, or all kinds of strange arcane regulations about custody or these types of things? It's not easy. And the overhead of building an interface for that is so expensive and time-consuming, they're not going to do it unless there's an overwhelming profit demand. So if somebody builds a great identity protocol, while that solves the regulatory issue of the crypto space, it also duly solves the bridge to allow liquidity. So people in the traditional space can go into the crypto space and back and forth. And you know what happens? Can you tell the difference between the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean? Can you? That's the point. It's like the ocean becomes the lake, and the lake becomes the ocean. So they merge, and they become one thing. But crypto's on top because the protocols carry integrity. They carry within rules that banks can't change, the BIS can't change, other people can't. The U.S. government can't wake up tomorrow and say, you know, for equity and diversity reasons, we need to print an extra 1 million Bitcoin. Can't do that. It's not possible. No one can, you see, and that's the power of these things. They're like an artificial law of physics. You know, it's a social law of physics. It constrains us. We can't wake up and say, well, I don't like gravity. There's a lot of mountaineers who've had that problem, and some skydivers. You can't just wish it away. You're constrained by it. And that's what makes engineering great. It's what makes physics great. And analogously, if society has constraints that are immutable, you can actually have predictability and great high integrity systems. So I think they're going to merge. I think it'll take about 5 to 10 years, and I think it'll occur somewhere in the 4th generation of cryptocurrencies. And at that point, we've won, if we've done it right.
Thank you so much for being such a fantastic audience. And we'll give a round of applause for Charles. It's been a pleasure.